What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Force Dyad podcast. This is episode 56. We're going to be covering Ahsoka Part 3, Time to Fly, tonight. I'm your host, Jedi John. What is that? Whoops.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim. Millions of families suffer every year.
I felt it. I felt the mistake coming, and I couldn't wait for it. And then it was that, and I'm like, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect it.
Whoa. Right.
Just to recap real fast. Yeah. You're Obi-Sean.
I am Obi-Sean.
I'm Jedi John.
You are Jedi John.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
That needs to be the intro. Beep beep. All right, here we go.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power.
Why is the Force connecting us?
I'm a Jedi. Always do. There are.
We're a dyad in the Force.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Force Dyad podcast. This is episode 56. We've got Ahsoka Part 3, Time to Fly tonight, plus some toy news and a big announcement at the end of the cast, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'm your host, Obi-Sean, joined, as always, by my co-host with the most, Jedi John. How you doing, buddy?
You did so well that time. I'm great.
I got the names right.
I'm great. You're great.
I got my
good.
I got my summer snips shirt on.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking very festive.
Living the good life. Got to go to the baseball game earlier this evening, which was lovely because it was free.
It's a nice night for it too.
It was, of course, on script. The Cardinals were winning, then they were losing, which is when we left, and then they were winning again, and then we lost.
Yeah,
so,
pretty much on pace for the year.
That is on brand for them this year. So, how's your Saturday been?
I worked.
Oh, lovely, wonderful.
Dinner with the fam, and then now the fun begins.
Doing this.
Yeah.
So episode 3, Ahsoka. Shall we just dive right in?
I think that's the appropriate thing to do.
Fair enough. Recap's going to be pretty simple, right? We're on the T6 shuttle, blasting through hyperspace on the way to Cetos with Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang. And we catch Sabine practicing, doing her training, in the style of what I would consider to be like a Japanese sort of samurai. Huyang's got the tatami mats, and Sabine's got the...
And he is crushing her still.
Well, he's so, kind and supportive of her efforts, and... But yeah, the training scene with the Bokans, and then you get the kind of Ahsoka extension of that training. We get a brief callback to A New Hope, which was fun. We can, I guess, reference that a little bit later. And that's your cold open for the episode. So we then kind of pivot to Hera trying to get resources from the New Republic, specifically Chancellor Mon Mothma. So we get the reveal, I guess, that she is the new Chancellor of the New Republic, along with a few of her senators overhearing the request from Hera.
So her politicking went well. That's what I'm hearing.
It did go well. She was successful in that.
Another liar. Dang it.
She is ultimately shot down. Senator Xenos does not buy the fact that Thrawn is a threat, and frankly, neither do any of the other senators. And so
they're all Imperials, all of them.
I mean, I don't know what else it could be, frankly. But no, I mean, there's definitely a lot of dismissal in the senators' voices. So Hera and Sabine are left to do it alone, or to go it alone, I guess. We get a brief...
Ahsoka and Sabine.
What's that?
Go at it again. Okay. Ahsoka and Sabine.
Who did I say?
Hera's not on the mission.
Oh yeah, right. My bad. So we get a brief force, like a heart-to-heart with the force as far as Sabine and Ahsoka are concerned. Sabine tries to move a cup unsuccessfully. And then we're treated to a really exciting dogfight scene between Shin and Marok, and there's 4 other rando aliens.
Who you knew were gonna die.
Yeah, exactly. They're the expendable characters in that
Yeah,
scene.
the collateral damage of this scene. Sorry.
So, and Hu Yang's in the process of trying to scan the hyperspace ring, right? The Eye of Sion, while they're getting shot at. So Sabine takes tail gun, Ahsoka, well, obviously piloting. There is a moment where there's finally this connection between the two of them, which allows them to dispatch a handful of them. They eventually get kind of left for dead, not left for dead, but like floating.
And they get too close to the ring.
Hopelessly in space.
And they get shot down, basically.
Exactly.
But they didn't explode.
Nope. They were just immobilized. So they were sitting ducks, basically. And then we get treated to I mean, visually spectacular scene with Ahsoka doing the spacewalk on the wing of the T6 shuttle, which, I mean, was fun in a really kind of goofy sort of way, but
it was as Star Wars as you can get. The bad guys should have done something. They didn't. And our heroes escaped somehow.
It was like the Star Wars equivalent of a monologue, right? Like
yeah.
It's
like the evil monologue.
Exactly. It's like in The Incredibles, right? Oh, you caught me monologuing again. So yeah, it allows Sabine to rewire the ship, and they end up blasting down to the planet's surface. And in the process, we get to see, I guess, up close, the first live action Purgle.
A pod of Purgle,
which is really cool. The special effects for that were fantastic because they looked
great.
They looked as whale as you could get. Like, I mean,
like
they
very
were
true
whales.
Space whale.
Exactly. So, and I mean, and I say it's kind of first look because we saw them as a silhouette, right, in Mandalorian season 3, and I think again in episode 1 or maybe it was 2 when Baylan's actually looking into the clouds, you can kind of see silhouettes of them. So, but seeing them in dwarfing the ship, that was really cool. So they make it to the planet's surface, and the episode ends with Baylan sending a squad of foot soldiers to find them in the forest.
I assume Shin will be with them based on the trailers we've seen.
So. And Marok.
Yeah.
So I think, it's funny because we talked last, and, so that's the episode, right?
Yeah, it's amazing that we got through a brief discussion on a very brief episode. It's a good recap right there. Somehow you shortened the episode.
I did well not to go into too many details of the episode, but we talked last episode about the inevitable showdown or rematch of Shin and Sabine, and I think I wasn't. I mentioned I hadn't thought of it, and then of course it was in the trailers, one of the trailers. So.
We're idiots.
So yeah, but so some of the fun Easter eggs, right? Real quick to kind of point some of that out. I already alluded to one of them with the training helmet, and she's like, Sabine says, I can't see in this. How am I supposed to fight? Right? Classic Luke in A New Hope. The cup scene reminded me so much of Ezra with the bowls in Rebels. I mean, same sort of thing, right? And I believe Sabine actually mocked him in that scene for playing with the bowls, right? And now she, in turn, is trying to move the cups, right? So again, I'm thankful for having watched Rebels, because you get.
I'm so happy you got through it.
Of course, we get our first look at Jacen Syndulla in live action.
Yep.
complete with his green hair.
Almost 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
At this point.
It was interesting, and so I just finished the second rewatch right before we started recording, and he has like a shoulder pauldron, not pauldron, but like a shoulder plate that I realize it's probably not Kanan's, right? Because he probably was wearing it, but it looks an awful lot like the one that Kanan had on his right shoulder. So I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just me kind of looking for
Hera's
things.
just dressing him like, Dad would have dressed you. So yeah.
I saw something. Speaking of that, I saw something on, I think it was probably Facebook. It might have been Twitter, or X, about how they almost have to mention Kanan at some point because people who haven't watched Rebels might think that somehow he's Ezra's kid because Hera is so hell bent on finding Ezra.
Right.
That,
Yeah, I
don't think they need to do that, but
I don't think that's yeah. They'll figure it out. If they want to know, they can go do the research real quick. It's a quick Google search.
yeah. The we already talked about it, but the Japanese fighting styles, the callbacks to the old samurai films, we talked about it the other night, the tatami mats. I immediately thought of Forged in Fire, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it is or was a reality television show on the History Channel where they would make knives and swords and axes and everything like that. And to test sharpness, Doug Marcaida, who was trained in like Japanese style fighting, would cut these giant tatami mats, and then he would look at the screen, or he would look at the contestant and go, "It will cut." And just her slicing through the tatami mats was, I don't know, I got a kick out of that. Not an Easter egg, but
I enjoyed that scene. And then in the background, at the open training, like weaponry that they had available.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see the lightsaber hilts in there. I'm curious to see how many functional lightsabers are on that ship. And I wonder if we get a chance to actually know, or if, Huyang's just doing his thing and creating hilts out of what's available when they find stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't notice that. I guess I didn't look closely enough at that. So yeah, it'll be curious to know if Huyang's the one making them or if they've just been collecting them throughout their travels. Now I'm gonna have to watch it a third time, or at least fast forward to that scene so I can see everything that you're looking at. Another interesting thing, and again we kind of talked about it the other night, but the way that Ahsoka is training Sabine in that scene felt very much like how Anakin, I said this to you, how Anakin would have trained her. His direction to her, and I feel like that's flowing through now from Ahsoka to Sabine. She's very kind of rigid in the discussions, right? Taking it very seriously, right? There's not any sort of like softness with it, right? Because it's in essence, it's a survival skill. And the unbalanced comment he makes to her, anger and frustration will, grant you general power, but they'll make you unbalanced, right? And then of course she says, "Let's go again." And it felt very Anakin. I don't know if you got the same sort of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest debate right now is like, did she actually tap into the dark side for a minute, and let that frustration and hate, kind of anger, take over? But because she did seem like she, caught a glimpse of what Ahsoka was looking for out of her. Because at the one point she stopped and like could feel her presence, and then turned directly at her, and then started striking. Versus I would say just random wailing of the weapon in the beginning. So yeah, it was overall, I mean, I enjoyed that, just the aspect of, like you said, the directness, because as soon as it happened, like it looked cool, and then she just tripped her over and said, yeah, you suck still. So, and
Well,
this is why.
Right, and
Like-
and the entire time she's controlled, right? She's not. She being Ahsoka is controlled, easily parrying because Sabine can't see her.
Oh, you mean the person that's like imbued with all aspects of the Force could figure out what they were gonna do next? Yeah, amazing.
Stunning.
Ahsoka being OG is no surprise to me. So, I said OG. She is OG, but OP. My bad.
She is extraordinarily strong in a multitude of ways. Speaking of Anakin, I also thought back briefly to the training scene between him and Obi-Wan in the Kenobi series, right, where he kind of briefly gets the upper hand. Anakin gets the upper hand through kind of the power and rage and stuff like that, but of course Obi-Wan inevitably flips it on him. So, but yeah, that training scene, while relatively long and extended, I feel like they probably could have.
Yeah, I mean,
shortened it
with
a
the
little
shortness, with the shortness of the episode, it was like 10% of the episode.
It was extended. So, but yeah, I do like that we're getting kind of the hurdles and the struggles that Sabine is encountering versus, 2 episodes from now when she realizes how to use a lightsaber and somehow taps in the Force, people aren't like, well, where did that come from, right? At least we get to see a little bit of it, so doesn't come out of left field.
It would have been crazy if she would have showed up episode 1 and tapped into the Force already.
Yeah.
When so many people probably rewatched Rebels, and they were like, because most people didn't even remember that like she had Ezra's lightsaber, and then all of a sudden people were like, wait a second, why does she have his lightsaber? That doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. But he personally hand it to her. And then, but for her to have all of a sudden Force powers to open up this series would have been ridiculous to so many people, because they would be like, even though it's 10 years later, Sabine never showed Force powers at all. So it would have been interesting. But yeah, so she is learning. The other thing I liked about this episode was it kind of like, I'll say I liked and disliked it, because I'm not saying they're cheapening what it means to be a Jedi, but they are basically saying that you can be trained in this way even if you're not connected to the Force in the way you need to be. Which is good, but also it takes away like the eliteness of what the Jedi. I mean, Huyang was the perfect example of. I mean, he told Ahsoka she would have never been trained, and Ahsoka was just like, right, but they failed. Like, even with what they expected out of their Jedi, like they still failed. So obviously there's flaws in their way of thinking.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you bring that up, because I was going to actually tweet something about this the other day, because I saw a picture on somebody else's page, and it was a tagline or a headline or snippet from an article or something saying that this episode confirmed one of the most controversial things that I guess The Last Jedi had introduced, which was that you didn't have to be like quote unquote overly Force sensitive to use the Force, right? Be a Jedi to use the Force.
Yeah, because it was a kid with a broom. Right?
Exactly,
it's a slave boy with a broom.
So, and I felt that was really lazy, and the reason why.
Oh, what they did in the last, yes.
No. That comment, because it's been confirmed prior to Ahsoka that this is true. So, in the most recent phase of the High Republic, right, the comics specifically, we have Jedi going back to Jeddah, right, as part of their mission for, I forget the exact things. I'll do a separate, comic breakdown here in the next couple months. But anyways, when they go to Jeddah, the 2 Jedi Knights who are sent are immediately like heckled, hated, etc., because there are numerous people who are and sects and groups and who are able to tap into the Force for various reasons. And the Jedi see it as like, oh, we're the only one. They're very gatekeepy, right? The Jedi are seen as gatekeepers of the Force, right? And the Force is for everyone. And so you've got, I mean, even Night Sister magic uses certain aspects, like it has to use certain aspects of the Force. However, beyond that, you have, and again, I don't know the group's names off the top of my head, but there are multiple sects. It's like it's a religion, right? The Force is...
I mean, it goes back to just A New Hope, right? I mean, they put the line with Obi-Wan, like the Force connects all living things. So like...
And Ahsoka reinforces that, right, in this episode. Kanan said the exact same thing to Sabine during their training in Rebels, right? The exact same thing. But the actual usage of the Force by people who are non-Jedi has been known, like in canon, for the better part of a year.
Well, longer than that. Go back to Rogue One. I mean, Chirrut was not necessarily a Jedi, but he definitely was
Force sensitive.
In.
Yeah, exactly. And that was always speculated. I don't know if that was ever technically confirmed, right? But
definitely tuned in, man.
regardless, another perfect example. But what I'm saying is that Ahsoka has done nothing special in confirming that concept, right? It's been done implicitly, right? Like you said with Chirrut, right? Everyone just assumes that he was attuned to the Force, right? Especially since they came from Jeddah, so it makes sense, right? And it goes back to what I just said about what has been confirmed in the comics most recently in this last phase. So, but to your point about cheapening it, I do understand that viewpoint, or at least making it feel less special. But I think it's my opinion that as long as it's done in a way that isn't like a shortcut, then I think if you're able to tap into what is technically in the Star Wars universe a natural phenomenon, basically it exists to be used should you choose to use it, right? And understand how to use it. I don't have any issues with that, and I wouldn't have any issues with Sabine learning and actually honing a level of Force skills. And Ahsoka says it right when she says she doesn't need to be a Jedi, right? Because the Jedi aren't the only ones who can use the Force.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and probably a lot of fans out there, while enjoying the show, like it is, I mean, very entertaining. I've not been disappointed yet. Is just the fact that we're going into somebody that is probably mid-20s, right? So I mean, Sabine's mid-20s.
In Ahsoka?
In Ahsoka, yeah.
Nah, she's probably I would think she's probably in her 30s now.
I mean, she was technically a teenager in Rebels, right?
Oh, see, I always pegged her for like in her early 20s in Rebels. I could be wrong, but anyway, I mean, so she's like mid.
We'll look back, right?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s, early 30s, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about somebody that has not touched the Force for 25 plus years or more, and all of a sudden now we're going to be able to teach them how to tune into it, and they're going to be able to use it. I think that's the biggest I'll call it a gripe from some fans out there. Again, my view on it was that I just don't want them to cheapen the Jedi, but then again, they don't have to be a Jedi to learn, like you said, how to use it.
Right.
Like they can use it. I think that's where I was getting stuck up on it, was like it used to be just Jedi. Obviously, we've seen other people. But like even like Chirrut was probably like a religious, believer, right? He studied and like he did everything he needed to do to be tuned in. Like the boy in The Last Jedi that just all of a sudden the broom just came to him. Maybe that's an ultra Force sensitive kid that like has no training and he's just ultra Force sensitive, versus somebody like Sabine, not Force sensitive, but can still learn to use it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And because it was a slave boy in a horse race track, like, and the Jedi Order being completely gone, nobody found the kid,
right?
Because there was no one to find him. So that makes sense. At the same time, it was just like, I don't know. It was just the, like I said, the cheapening of the eliteness of being a Jedi. But then again, she's not training her to necessarily be a Jedi.
Right.
Even though she's Padawan.
Yeah, that was another thing, right? Like,
Let's go back. I mean, there's a lot of conflicting statements in there. You know, I don't know. It's tough to keep it all straight, but at the same time, I'm really enjoying the show, and I do hope she gets in tune with attuned to the Force and can use it to some capability. It'll be interesting going forward. I mean, I can't believe if it's next episode or even the episode right after that, like her rematching Shin and beating her. It just doesn't seem like it's going to go. I mean, we're going at literal light speed in this show.
True.
Like as far as like progressing into the next battle. Each episode is like one more step towards the next battle. So, or it literally is flying into the next battle. So, and now they're searching for them in the forest, and we know from the trailers that there's a lot of trees around Shin and Sabine for their next fight, and then we already know that Ahsoka meets Baylan in the star map on that planet, based on trailers. So, like, if it's not next episode, when do we get those fights?
Right. Well, and also we know that Marok faces off against Ahsoka in the forest also.
Yeah,
I think it's Ahsoka. Now, one thing I want to that point about the confrontations that's upcoming, and to what you said earlier about Sabine and perhaps her tapping into a dark feeling during the training scene with Ahsoka. If we think back again to Rebels, one of the first times that Ezra truly taps into the Force is the Darkside, when they're on that planet to save Sabine and Hera from those like bat creatures that are, you know, they're weakened by the sun. Yeah. And then the Grand Inquisitor shows up, right? And in order to escape, Ezra taps in and calls the Master Bat up to go after the Grand Inquisitor so they can escape, right? Like that was like his first true tapping into the Force powers, right? Or actually, I guess technically, go back. It was throwing Callus against the rock to save Zeb in episode 3 or 4.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever that was, right? So anyways, out of emotion, out of fear, etc., right, was the first times that he kind of truly harnessed his power before Kanan helped him center it. And I could totally see Sabine's first Force-induced action coming out of fear or anger against, you know, whom she's fighting. So that's an interesting comment or thought from you know, what you were saying earlier about her tapping into the dark side.
Yeah.
So the other thing, you know, I wanted to talk about is, before we get to our ratings and stuff, is kind of the title of the episode, right? And kind of what my opinions are on the purpose of it, right? Because a lot of people, I'm sure, when we go through the critic or the user reviews on IMDb, are going to be, well, nothing happened. You know, this is boring. This is a filler episode. And I'm going to put that in air quotes, right?
I don't think it is, but yeah.
Right.
I mean,
and I don't think so either, right? So
took leaps forward in the story compared to, I mean, our heroes and our villains are right next to each other now.
Right. And well, I guess the thought was, okay, the last thing we see at the end of episode 2, right, is them loading the hyperspace hyperdrive into the ring, right? And then we end up basically just outside the planet. We see the ring, and then they land on the planet's surface, right? So we didn't really gain a lot of distance, so to speak, right? Like, because you're in a hyperspace lane the whole time. But regardless, people are going to complain about that because it's us. Like us, as the royal us in the Star Wars fandom, we like to find things
The
to
royal
complain.
us, yes.
Right? Not us as in you and I, but...
We expect so much.
Right. So, you know, the whole time to fly thing, right? So obviously they're flying, right? So there's the literal sense in the title, right? But flying, you know, letting your children fly, right? Like grow, spread their wings, become stronger, you know, show off the growth, right? Obviously, Sabine's last name is Wren, which is, of course, a bird. But I think the primary purpose of this episode was to show how much trust, like you have the trust between Ahsoka and Sabine growing. And then on the flip side of that, we get the trust between Hera and the New Republic, or even those within the New Republic, right? The lack of trust on the flip side of the coin, right? And, you know, during the dogfight, Ahsoka finally allows Sabine to, like she said, kind of be herself. And she trusts her to make the right call as far as directing her how to pilot. And so you see that growth between the two of them. What was once really cold and kind of snarky towards each other, right, in the first couple episodes has now kind of warmed, right?
I think the biggest thing too there, sorry to cut you off, but like the, you know, Ahsoka in the pilot seat telling her you have to be able to anticipate the moves I'm going to make. And then Huang just comes in and says, well, if you keep this up, there won't be a next time, you know, like, and then she kind of just pauses and you realize that she realizes that, oh yeah, that's right. She's not attuned to the force. Like we're not connected like that. So we need to communicate differently because she's not going to anticipate my flight maneuvers. And it's been years since she's been in that seat with me. So we have to do something different. So
yeah, that's a really good point. And she finally trusts herself. Ahsoka finally trusts herself to allow Sabine to do that. And that's a big deal, obviously, for the two of them. It's going to be a huge deal, I think, for Sabine, right? And her willingness to continue to learn and pick up things, right? And I was thinking a lot about how, again, going back to the parents and the children sort of thing, right? As a parent, right, you spend time instructing, protecting, you know, nurturing your children, but eventually you have to let them go, like do things, right? You can't protect them from everything forever. And if you do try to do that, right, they'll never grow as a person. They'll never gain new skills. They'll never get to do any of this sort of stuff. And so you see that, I think, briefly, you know, as concise as they make it in these television shows. But I think the concept that, you know, in order for Sabine to grow, Ahsoka has to let her do things, right? She can't hold her hand through everything. And so as it relates to this episode and the importance of it, I think that the strengthening of their relationship is going to be very important over the next, you know, well, probably the rest of the season, because, you know, she alludes to it at the beginning about her weapon skills and stuff like that not being enough to defeat the enemy, right? Well, that's because they need their connection to each other. And as you said, it's not necessarily going to be through the Force, right? Or it'll be loosely through the Force. So I thought it was very important to kind of set this up where their trust comes back into play, because they had it together once, then they lost it. So they have to get it back. And so I think it was a really important way to recenter their level of trust in each other and that relationship that they have with one another.
Absolutely.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is so Baylan, right? We get Baylan briefly at the very end as he's like kind of brooding over something, right? Clearly contemplating
life.
Who knows what, right? Probably. I cannot be the only person who thinks he looks like Paul Hollywood from British Bake Off. Like, I cannot be the only person. And so, like, he's standing there and I'm like thinking to myself, all right, he's going to say it's underbaked. You know, it's stodgy. You know, it's because he's just brooding, right? He's, you know, thinking about how terrible that tart was that he had for lunch. But as he stands there brooding, right, he's clearly contemplating something. What is Baylan's motivation here? Like, does he actually genuinely care about Ahsoka? I
truly think he's just a paid mercenary, so he's doing his job right now. Like, that's ultimately what he cares about. I don't think he's as concerned about what happens to who. You know, we heard him say in the last episode that, like, you know, taking out Ahsoka would be a big deal, because there's not very many Jedi left. So I think he knows the importance of everything. I think he's definitely a vision type Jedi. Originally, like he uses his skill to look into the future a lot. So it's just very interesting that he's in the predicament he is. Like, I think he's just a pure mercenary, and then we'll see how that develops as we go through. Like, he's the kind of guy I could see taking a sacrifice play and flipping sides when they need him the most, you know? So
that would be interesting. I would be surprised if it was purely money, right? Which is, again, all a mercenary would want. What I can't remember if it was you and I talking, or if maybe I just heard somebody say it or saw somebody say it. But I thought it was interesting in that, you know, what if he's trying to find Thrawn because he assumes that somewhere he knows how to get back to the world between worlds, and he wants to use that to stop Anakin.
I see where you're going with that. Everyone's been obsessed with that dimension, so to speak, and how, like, they're like, everybody thought the star map was that, you know, like when they saw the star map, oh, they're going there, they're going there.
True.
And I'm like, I just don't think they're going to even touch it. I don't think that's the end goal. I just don't think that's it's going to be part of the anything going forward. It's too much of a trap for a writer when you think about it. Like, it goes back to the whole time travel trope in like any franchise that's ever done it, right? Like, if you go there once, you know, what's to stop you from going back to the well to undo something that happened? Like, I just think they want to stay away from it. I mean, I would personally stay away from it, but I don't see them going there. I just don't see it. So I understand where that theory is coming from, and it would be interesting if, because for him to know that it was real, he would have had to have some kind of other knowledge, because other things that he's heard, like the Path to Peridia, like that was a legend to him, like a story that you would tell young kids. So, and until he saw it 2 episodes ago, he didn't even think it was real. So I think that he believes in the legend, like a legend's a legend to him.
Right.
And something like that, unless he personally saw it or was trained that it was real, would think that it was just a folklore, you know?
Because, and the only reason I mentioned that, again, aside from having read it, I think, or seen it somewhere, is his attunement to the Force seems greater than others we have seen, right? Like, he knew that Sabine was Ahsoka's apprentice at some point. I don't know how he would have known that, right? Because he knew she was on Lothal, right? And he mentions,
how long was he a Jedi before he? I mean, technically, he still could be a Jedi.
I mean, he is, like, he's not Sith, right? Like, he's not a Sith. But because others have commented on Shin's like Padawan braid, right? So there's still some level of Jedi-ness in him. Obviously, he's very noble in his demeanor and everything. He there's nothing about him that feels Sith. But I guess the comment about being able to feel Ahsoka through the Force, right? Her, at the end of episode 2, right? So he clearly can feel great distances, you know, these connections. And so, you know, with Ezra entering the world between worlds, and I don't know, it wouldn't surprise me, but I agree. If they do that, if they went there, right, it becomes, well, like you said, a writer's nightmare. It can become a crutch. It can wildly screw up the established canon.
Imagine.
Oh my, that would be just something else. So, anyways, I guess it'll be interesting to see what his true motivation is. Maybe it's to destroy Thrawn. Like, when he gets there, maybe his ultimate goal is to try and get rid of him, or to rid the society of him. And this is the closest way to do it, sort of type thing. So, I guess we'll see. So, your thoughts overall on this episode. What kind of grade would you give it?
I'm going straight down 7.5. Let's give it 7.5. I thought it was personally, like, when it was over, I'm like, oh, that was it. Like, compared to the last 2 episodes, I was just like, oh, I was really hoping for, you know, a consistent 40-minute plus episode, which would have been nice, you know. But that's not what we got, and it is what it is. Some of the scenes kind of just dragged on for me. I mean, I didn't not enjoy these scenes. It was just, you know, I get the gist. Let's move on. Let's go to the next thing. Purgle, awesome. Space battle, like, I love seeing the dogfighting. Awesome. Nothing wrong with any of that. I think the stuff I'm most unhappy with the episode was just the length, and then the fact that it's just some of the scenes just dragged on. I don't know what it was. I just, overall, still very entertaining for me. I had a blast with it, but yeah, some of the scenes just dragged on, and I'm just like, I can move on from this now. But if they would have shortened those scenes, it would have been even shorter than it was, and I'd be more unhappy. So I don't know. There's no winning. I'm the typical Star Wars fan right now. I just wanted more.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I tend to agree actually with most of what you said. I'd probably give it the same grade.
Oh yeah, and even though we had the space battle and, like, you know, the Ahsoka on the wing of the ship with her lightsabers deflecting blast, that's just, if I was a kid, I'd be like, this is so awesome. Did you see Ahsoka flipping through space and, like, oh my gosh, deflecting those, oh my gosh. But as an adult, like, even though, like, I can suspend some belief a little bit, like, why wouldn't they just shoot the ship? So, like, and then also it goes back to, like, and no offense to anything else that they create, because it is what it is. But, like, the Eye of Sion can only fire their blasters one direction. Like, they can't rotate those guns 180 degrees and shoot the other side. They only shoot the one side. I don't know. Good question. Why did she stop firing it at all? I don't know.
Well, because they'd gone through.
Right, so they can't turn the guns there. I don't understand. Like, that's what I'm. Or I guess it wasn't on their scopes because the ship was dead. So the scopes were down. Like,
yeah, I mean that's obviously a fair criticism. Yeah, I don't really have a good answer for that one.
You
Other
have
than
a window.
Other
you
than
have a window and guns. I don't understand.
Other than the turbo lasers are too far forward, to the one side, like near, like, forward to the bridge. And so, like, if you were to turn it around, the kind of shape of the ship, or the shape of the ring would prohibit you from firing. Well, obviously you can't fire down, and because they were just kind of floating past.
But that's what I'm saying. They didn't add guns anywhere else on the ship.
Not on the inside. You can't do it on the inner ring, and so, because that's your hyperspace, like, dock, you can't do that. So you can't put turbo lasers on the inner ring. So that makes sense. I mean, I buy that. And they didn't float far enough out the other side to actually be at an angle that you could shoot at. So I don't actually have a problem with that. Just like when we talked the other night about her flipping through space, if you watch, she does flip off the fuselage away, right? Which is why she ends up, see you later.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we saw that.
Yeah,
like,
so.
Hey, did you fix the ship yet?
Great, come get me. That was, I laughed. I
laughed at that.
I had an audible
I
LOL. That was an audible LOL.
I chuckled at that. But yeah, like I said, like, the, you know, Shin and Merrick being the fight,
Yeah.
like, neither one of them decided, just, you know what, I'm just going to shoot the entire ship.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and that's fair. And that is fair.
That's cool scene, though. Cool scene.
Very cool. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Also, I've, you know, some of the highs. Again, the music direction has been phenomenal so far throughout the whole series. Music is, once again, top marks. I enjoyed the relationship, you know, the kind of the world building, storytelling side of things. It's setting it up for, I think, a big, probably next 2, because we just had 3. Actually, probably next 3. So I think, like, the next 3 episodes will probably all be kind of like an arc, kind of like they did with Andor, and then the last 2 will kind of be a big crescendo, I think, or at least that's my theory. I agree. Some of the scenes were a little extended, which kind of slowed things down. But yeah, space whales, fun dogfight, a lot of fun little homages to like A New Hope and Rebels. Certainly, obviously, Rebels is going to have a ton of callbacks. So, yeah, 7.5 for me. So, real quick.
Go to the IMDb.
To the interwebs. So IMDb, the rating after 5,000 entries is 7.5 out of 10. So, right there. It is the lowest, of course, of the 3 episodes so far. Not really surprising. So the big one will be the user reviews. And this is where I said before we started recording, you're going to love this. There are 66 user reviews.
Oh, yes. No one's allowed to review.
That's right. The reviews have to end right there.
Any Star Wars fan that logs in is just like, I can't say what I want to say now because we're perfect.
Oh, jeez. So let's see. Posey fan. Again, always going to start with our friend Posey fan. 7 out of 10 from Posey fan. So says, this show has the potential to reach great heights. We will watch your career with great interest. 2 out of 10, inane dog water for simpletons. Yikes. Painful. The trend of beautiful but stupid continues. 4 out of 10. 3 out of 10, lots of copied scenes. There's not a lot of people who like expand upon their ratings, right? They're just like, it sucks, and that's the end of it.
It sounds like poor customer reviews.
Wow. 3 out of 10. The Phantom Menace was more exciting and made more political and military sense than this. So the first sentence is Hera's warmonger. So, it's a good start. Enemy fighters aim for astronaut, not crippled ship. Hey.
Listen.
That is accurate. That is a fair criticism. So,
as a kid, I would have loved it. As an adult, I'm like, you guys are idiots. Like,
I still thought that scene was really cool. Even taking the lack of strategy out of it, right? The like you said, it was like the most Star Warsy type of scene. It was just kind of off the wall, kind of goofy, in a fun way. So, yeah.
Very similar mask to like it was a very narrow space mask too, like kind of like how like Han and Leia had their I honestly, she didn't have the tube or anything, but like very slim, attached to the face.
And it was perfectly fit for her Montrals and her Leiku, which was
like
fantastic.
Like it was a custom job there.
It was fantastic. So then you got some positive ones here. So keeps you intrigued, continues the story from previous episodes, slowly revealing pieces. And I really don't mind that because I enjoyed the slow burn that Andor gave us, right? And I'm not saying it's like Andor, right? But I didn't mind the slower pace of things as long as it pays off. It actually just says the show very much is a slow burn. I promise I didn't read that line. I feel like Dave is passionate about the show and the characters as he spends time with these different interactions to build relationships.
I mean, he created all these characters, so I would agree with that. He probably cares about these characters a whole lot.
He loves these characters.
I'm just going to go ahead and just put it out there. I think Dave cares about these characters.
No-ish, Sherlock.
No-ish. No-ish.
Speaking of Sherlock, didn't David Tennant play Sherlock at one point? I think he did. I know he played Doctor Who. But anyways, 8 out of 10, long line of non-traditional Jedi. I did like that comment from Hu Yang, right?
It was good.
So that was good. But yeah, frankly, there's the filler, episode 1. So, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm surprised by what I'm reading here. There are some really high marks, and then for the most part, you got a lot of 5, 6, and 7s out of 10s from viewers. So, and some of the critiques are fine, and other ones are just, again, kind of lazy critiques. So,
honestly, this is the first time I think we hit it dead on.
Yeah, I think so.
Usually I'm a little more critical than them. Like, I think the last 2 episodes I've been just a little bit below them, maybe like 0.2 or something like that below each time. But yeah, nailed it right on.
Yeah. So I mean, again, is it perfect? No. Yeah. But I think where they're going, or I guess that's the one thing that I'm not entirely
as long as it
certain
pays
of,
off.
is where
as long as it all pays off.
where's it going? And we kind of talked about that again in last episode, where you're gonna find Thrawn, and then at some point he has to escape. So you're gonna have this whole searching thing. You're gonna have all these characters to find this one character and possibly another, right?
No, there is another.
But to what end, right? And so that's the big question mark. And yeah, as long as it pays off, I'm here for it. So, real quick toy news. I know we've got some new Lego releases that came out yesterday. Is today the 2nd? Today's the 2nd, so it did come out yesterday. Everyone kind of knew what was coming, but they officially released yesterday. You had the Coruscant Guard gunship, the T6 shuttle that we've seen. You've got a New Republic E-Wing versus Shin Hati Starfighter, which I did like the shape of her Starfighter. It gave me a Soulless One vibe. It kind of gave me a General Grievous vibe from like the side, not fully built up, of course. But we have the Walking Nightmare that is the Chewbacca set. And then the Ghost and Phantom set, the second kind of iteration of that. One thing on the Ghost and Phantom set that I want to talk to is the fact that it comes with a Jacen Syndulla minifigure.
Really?
But Lego screwed up and gave him brown hair instead of green. So, which is shocking because Lego should know ahead of time what the characters are going to look like when they make the minifigures. So the fact that he clearly has green hair, which he had in the animated series, right? The brief 30 seconds he was on screen. To come back and give him brown hair. I wonder if they'll end up fixing it the way that they did, ironically, and maybe this is intentional, the way they did it with Kanan. So when the original set released, the original Ghost, it came with a black-haired Kanan, and everyone knows that Kanan has brown hair. And that is a highly sought-after minifigure because of the screw-up. And so I wonder if the early sets of this Ghost, with Jacen having brown hair, will become the black-hair Kanan of this set, or if they royally just intentionally or unintentionally screwed up. I guess I don't know, but the fact that the original Ghost set came with a hair screw up as well, and this one has a second screw up on the same thing, his child, no less. Perhaps that's too coincidental to be an accident.
Yeah, feels like they did something there.
So, but for those who are interested, the Coruscant gunship is $140. The T6 shuttle is $80. The E-Wing versus Shin Starfighter set is $110. Chewbacca is a $200 set. I will not be getting that. And the Ghost and Phantom set is $160. So I think I might get that, but we will see. No toy news from you, right?
Yeah, just the the Ghost Vintage Collection funding on HASLAB.
Ah, yes.
Closing out in 4 days from the time of this recording, which is September 2nd. So it closes out on September 7th, and that's when payments are due for everybody out there that is wondering. $4.99 retail price on it. They're currently trying to unlock Kanan. They've already hit the tier that unlocks Ezra. They're trying to unlock Kanan, and then the last unlock that they have is for Zeb. Currently at, I just saw that number. Where's that number at? 12,865 backers at the time of this recording. So they need to get to 17K, I believe, to get Zeb. Okay. I believe. So lots to do in the next 4 days. Generally, it jumps about 30% in the last 48 hours, though. So there's a good shot to unlock everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes to show that if Hasbro actually makes something that people want, they will.
They at least get backed.
Back it.
R.I.P. Rancor.
No love lost for Reva's lightsaber, of course.
Don't care. Yeah, they can figure out how to do that without a HASLAB.
Exactly. So the last thing we're going to touch on briefly is we got some exciting news to share. and that is we will be attending Cape Con, our first convention as a podcast, and broadcasting from their podcast lounge. Cape Con takes place in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. So for anybody who's relatively local, it's about an hour and 45 minutes from St. Louis. And so it's September 29th through October 1st. We are slated to broadcast Saturday evening, so September 30th. I think right now we're slated for 7, but schedules could change. But very excited to go to the convention and
come make a night of it.
Yes.
Come see us.
If you're in the area, please come visit and come hang out with us. We're gonna have a really good time. So we actually got to start thinking about some fun topics to do. But we've got a little bit of time.
We're gonna blast.
It'll be a great time. But with that, I think we're gonna bring the show to a close. If you do like the content you hear, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, following, rating, etc. It does really help the show out. We really appreciate all of that. Be sure to follow us on our social media pages. Links will be in the description or the show notes. And with that, we're going to make the jump to hyperspace aboard the Eye of Sion. So on our quest for Thrawn. So
it's bringing back the whole Chimera, right? It's bringing back the whole Chimera.
I hope so. It has
It's
to.
too big not to bring back the whole Chimera.
And just latch on and there it goes. But for Jedi John, I'm Obi Sean, and until next time,
May the Force be with you.